Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Herve Shop Shop. This week, I'm using a gimbal that Luke bought me for my birthday. And it's really fancy. We're going to be installing some central locking on the Hilux. So first of all, thank you very much, Luke, for this gimbal. It takes a fair bit of getting used to, but it's really cool. And you can do time lapses with like pans and stuff. I've used it in the last few videos and it's pretty cool. Still getting my head around it, but it's going to be very useful. Thank you very much. Are you sick of doing this? To unlock your car door. And this to lock it. Having to hold the handle out like a pleb. Make sure it's locked. Say no more. Get yourself a central door locking system from eBay for like 50 bucks. And a pen, because you're going to need that at some point. And a drink, because you can't have an install without a drink. Let's get stuck into it. Today we're going to be installing central locking on the Hilux. So this is just a kit off eBay. It was the one that I could find with the nicest remote, which is, sounds like a silly thing, but that's the bit you'll be using. So it makes sense to get the one that you like. These ones I don't really like, but they were the best ones I could find. So it's just got unlock and lock on it. Pretty simple little thing, and it's pretty small. So that's all you need, 2 remotes and the little sender thing. The rest of it's pretty generic. You get some actuators, most of them have 2 wires, and then the master one which goes in the driver's door, that has 5 wires on it. So I've done a few of these sets before. We're only going to be using 2 because we've got a 2-door. And then normally what I do is keep the other one separate. And if you've got a hatchback or something, you make these auto pop the boot, auto pop the bonnet if you're that way inclined, or you can use these for all sorts of stuff. So I've got a pile of these in the shed, but we're going to be using 2 today. So let's get stuck into it and I'll show you what else comes in the kit. Alright, so here's everything that comes in that little kit. So you've got the master actuator, like I said, with the 5 wires. And you've got 3 slave ones, I guess you'd call them. Then you've got the small remote box, which controls everything. The 2 remotes that talk to this, obviously. Got a spare fuse, a little bag of bolts and screws. We've got a pretty easy wiring diagram. Everything's color coded anyway, so unless you put it in backwards, which you can do if you need to intentionally. Wiring diagram, fuse and wiring, which plugs straight into that box, and the other ends run to the actuators. And then you've got 4 of these little strips, which are just to help so you can screw this to the door and then screw the actuator to this, or whatever you need to do to get a bit more like bracing. And then 4 of these little things which slip into the end of the actuator. So that little step there sits into the actuator like that and stops it from falling out. So pretty simple little thing. So what you need to do, get this to attach to the door lock of the car. So normally they go up and down, or in the Hilux they go left and right. So you need this to attach to that with some of the supplied clips, and then have the actuator to pull and push on this. So it's a pretty simple thing. If you've never done it before, don't be scared. This was one of the first projects I ever did on a car. So I'll get the door card apart and I'll show you how it all fits together. So first thing you need to do is remove your door card. So that involves taking this window winder off, normally a plastic surround around the door handle, and a few little clips and a few little screws. There's normally one in here to hold the handle in, and the whole thing pops off and goes up. And then sometimes, some cars, this one for example, I'll have to take this corner piece off, and there's also a clip here. So I'll set up a time lapse and I'll get this off. So the hardest part of this installation is actually removing this piece. So this is the window winder that you get on each door. If you've got electric windows, you won't have any issues. And the hard part is this clip here. So it's called a Jesus clip. That's what a lot of people call it. It's probably not what it's actually called, but it's called a Jesus clip because when you get it undone and it springs off and you go, oh Jesus, where'd they go? So these are a pain in the bum. So this clip clips into the back of the window winder and holds it onto the splines. So the reason these are tricky, other than because they're tight, so they sit on the back of the window winder like this, and you need to get a flathead screwdriver in behind here and pull that off like that, and then the clip disappeared over there. So that's why they're a pain, but once you've got those off, you'll be set. That's the hardest part. So getting the door card off was actually really easy on this because it's a Hilux. There's not much to it. Just the window winder, a couple of screws, and the whole thing just pulls off. So it's a good time to replace your speakers if that's what you're into. These ones are still intact and I don't really care. So this one is a little bit different to all the other cars I've done. So this is a cable rather than a rod. So another thing I should have mentioned is keep the window winder on hand. Don't have the clip on the back of it. And then you can put it onto the window winder and put your window down so you can check for clearances. So you want to be able to put your window up and down. So if you've got electric windows, it might be a little bit fiddly, but we've actually got plenty of room in here. So it's just a good thing to think about, because if you put this together and then put your window down, your window might hit the actuator. Alright, so this is probably going to be one of the most difficult installs of central locking I've ever done. So this car has a cable going from the handle all the way to the mechanism, and there's no rod in sight. So what I'm going to have to do is somehow attach the actuator to the end of this cable. So whether that means taking all this out, putting the rod in line or something along those lines, and then putting this back on the other end, or who knows. So I've got to work that out, and then I'll be able to attach everything together. So let's work this out, and I'll show you the results once I know what I'm doing. Alright, so step one in ruining the door handle on my Hilux, or getting central locking. I've drilled out this tab slightly, which is on the back of the lock, and then I've threaded through the rod that comes with the central locking. So now I'll put the door handle wire back in and put the door handle back on, and I'll have this to work with instead of the cable, and then I'll be able to remotely move this. Then I'll just have to tee in the two cables. So this one is the door lock and that one is the door handle. So I'll connect that one back in, put the door handle back on, and then try and connect that to this with an actuator in the middle. Alright, so I have a bit of a plan. So I've bent the rod that I attached to the handle down a little bit, and then I'm going to put the actuator on what I would call backwards and mount it in here, and then have another rod going from the eyelet up a little bit and attaching to that one. So that sorts out the lock opening and closing, which does absolutely nothing other than an indication. And then I'm going to have to attach this cable back in there somewhere, or cut it shorter and attach it to this rod. So bit of stuffing around. So what I'm going to do now is attach this in here, fix it in there permanently, and then work out where I'm going from there. So about to drill some holes in here. Good idea to wire my window up so I don't put a drill bit through it. I don't really want to replace a window as well today. Alright, so I've drilled a hole here and over here and put a little bolt through, I think it's an M4 or M6 or something like that. And then I've got two sets of the brackets on here to make up the width. So it's always helpful to have a second set. So when you're doing a two-door, I suggest ordering a four-door kit, and then you've got an extra set of these, extra set of screws and all that sort of stuff. So you can use the self-tappers that are included, but I wouldn't, because they'll probably rattle loose. So these are a nut and a bolt, and these ones are the self-tappers. So this is fully extended, and you can see it's just touching the door. So when it goes in, this will bring this in, and when it goes out, it'll bring that out. So now I'll make a rod to go from here, go up across to here, and then use the little joiner that comes in the kit, and hopefully we'll get this bit over here attached to the actuator, and then we have to work on the cable. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the rod coming off of the actuator going across and then up again just to get out of the way. I've got the little connector, and then I've got the rod going to the door handle. So now if I move this actuator, which is a little bit difficult, you can see that the door lock moves. It's easier to do it like this. So you can see it all moves together. So now I just need to chop this off. I'd like to bend it first so that it doesn't slip out of this clamp, and then chop this off, and then I need to make this attached to either up here or to this rod or to this rod or to the actuator. So there's a few options. So I drilled out that hole in the back of the lock mechanism a little bit bigger. I managed to get this cable, the original cable for the locking, in, and the rod for the actuator. So it all works together now. It's a little bit stiff, so I might have to clearance some stuff some more, or I might have to see if it works before I put the door card back on, which is always a good idea. But these actuators are actually pretty strong, so it should be fine, but it's just something to keep in mind. So You can see the actuator move, all happy and dandy. So now if I open the door, that's fine, reach in, push that lock over, it's locked, open the lock up, it's unlocked. So that should be all we need. So I need to obviously get all the wiring done, get the other side done, and then test it all before I put the door card back on. But that seems like a pretty solid concept. So I'll get the wiring and I'll show you that step. So I've got the wiring here just thrown on the floor. This plug up this end plugs into the receiver of the box, which is pretty easy. So there's 5 wires that make this thing work. So there's an earth, obviously, a couple wires for power, and then the blue and green ones are for the actuators. So because we're doing a 2-door, I don't need all of this. So what I'm going to do is cut off the extra blue and green wires, because we only need the front 2 doors. And then the rest of this pretty much just goes to power and earth. So super simple. I'll show you as we go. But the blue and green, they are, one's power and one's negative. So say you press the lock button, the green wire will be positive and the blue wire will be negative. And then when you press the unlock button, the green wire will be negative and the blue wire will be positive. So that's why I said before not to worry about which way around the actuator is, whether it points that way or points this way, because you can just swap the blue and green wires over. So if you press the unlock and it locks, swap the 2 blue and green and it will unlock. So it's pretty easy. I've run into that problem a couple of times, so just swap those 2 pins around and you're all good to go. Alright, so I'm not really one for instructions, but it does give you the labels for all the wires. So I've cut the blue and green that I don't need. So we've got the passenger door here, and then the rear doors over here, not connected to the loom. Then we've got the control box with a bunch of wires coming out of it, and there's a bit of a T-junction over here, and then this is your driver's door. So those 5 wires go to the 5 wires on the actuator, and the rest of these wires can go inside the car. So the control box, all the way up to this junction, is all inside the car. Then this goes to the door, and then this goes through the dash and then to the other door. So I'm just looking at the wiring here. So you can see here the manual switch is the brown and the white wires. So whichever one you earth will unlock or lock the car. So you don't necessarily need this, but it is sometimes a good idea. So because I've still got the key for the door, I'll be fine. Whereas if you were removing this and maybe doing shaved door handles or shaved door locks, you might want that manual override. Then you can see that the red with the fuse is the 12 volt positive, the black is a ground, and that's pretty much it. The blue and green go to the actuators, and all those 5 wires there go to the actuator as well. So super simple wiring diagram. I don't normally look at them, but this is the important part. So red wire for power, black wire for earth, then the brown and white, as far as I'm concerned, are optional because they're for the unlock and lock. So we're going to run these wires here through into the door, and this stuff inside the car. Alright, so you just saw me pull the inner trim off and a piece of foam out. So that foam was actually blocking the access to this wire here. So you can see this plug where my finger is, there's 2 wires on it, that's for the speaker. So that goes into the A-pillar and then through this wire here, through this conduit and into the door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to piggyback and sneak in through there with my 5 wires for the central locking. So I'll go from this side, in through the door A-pillar, through the conduit into the door. And then I can put everything back on and hide it all behind that cover. Alright, so that was a little bit fiddly, but I've got the wires run through that grommet, or that piece of conduit, through the door and to the actuator. So this is pretty loose, and obviously I need to cable tie it and stuff like that. And I have wired these backwards from the get-go because I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be facing around the other way. Like I said before, doesn't matter. So coming back down here, comes out of that little hole, and I've put the foam piece back in. So I've got the blue and green going to the other side. I'll have to run those under the dash and to the other door. And then we've got the little control box, which needs the power and the earth hooked up. And then we've got the brown and white wires that I was talking about before. So I'm probably going to try and mount this in here, something like that. But I'll have to get in there a bit better. Maybe down here would be better. We'll see. I'll have to get my head under the dashboard and have a better look. But actually the kit came with a small piece of double-sided tape which fits on the back of this, so if I find somewhere nice and flat I can just stick this to it. Alright, so it's a little bit dark in here, mind the lighting, but I've just stuck that with the double-sided tape to the inside of the A-pillar. Nice and firm, doesn't weigh anything anyway, so it's fine. There's an earth just behind it, so that's helpful. We'll use that shortly. And then the plug can go in here and then straight down. So it's all pretty good. So I'm just going to do the power and the earth now, and then we can give it a test. Alright, so the earth is run up behind the control box. There was already a factory earth point up there, so I've just teed into that with another terminal under the bolt. So then you can see I've run the antenna for the control box just here, so that way it's close to the driver's door, so when you try and unlock it, it should be fine. If you can have this as close to the door as possible is what I would recommend. I've never had any issues with it elsewhere, but it's a good practice to put it close to the door. So the next thing I need to do is find 12 volt constant power for the control box, which this wire here is already fused. So I just need to find some 12 volt constant. So the car is off, the ignition's off, car keys are out. This has 12 volt. Alright, so this is ridiculous. I've had to pull the whole dash apart to try and find constant power, and I ended up going with the constant power that goes to the radio because I can't find it anywhere else, which is ridiculous given how many wires are down there. Anyway, so I've just plugged in power, and now with the wires around the wrong way, it does this for some reason. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And the only way to get it to stop is to unplug it. So if I plug that in the right way, it works. If I plug it in the wrong way, it does that. So that's awesome. So I might have to switch the actuator around, but I'm going to give it a go swapping the wires around and see if I can get this to work the other way around. Alright, so I fixed it. All you got to do is swap the brown and white wires around as well. So you got the green and the blue around the wrong way, and the brown and the white around the wrong way. And now if I press, so this isn't actually connected, but if I press lock, it'll pull this way, which will pull this shut. So if I press lock, it goes across. If I press unlock, it goes across. Crisis averted. So I'll connect this all back up again and see if it works properly this time. Alright, so that has been a bit of a pain. So now you can see it's unlocked. If I press lock, it works. Press unlock, it works. So let's shut the door. Try it with the door shut. Because there's no point it working with the door open, is there? Alright, so unlocked, lock it, unlock it. Sweet. This has been such a pain. I can't believe I had to go all the way up there for power. Alright, so I chuck this door card back on. Now that I know this works, I'll zip tie everything, put the door card back on, make sure everything's tight. Then I will put this conglomeration of crap back together, run that wire to power, then run the wires over to that door, and then I can put everything back together. But I also have a speedo corrector to do, so I may as well leave some of it out. Alright, so I got the door card back together, got the window winder back on, windows up, all works. I've put all the trim kick panels back on, and I've run the power wire and the 2 passenger wires through where the cluster is supposed to be to the center. I've just spliced the power wire to this constant power wire for the radio, because when the car's off and you are locking or unlocking it, this won't be in use for the radio. I mean, it's constant power, so it only remembers your memory settings anyway. So little T in there is going to be fine. Then I've got the blue and green that I have to run to the other side of the car. They're probably going to be a little bit short now because I used the shorter ones, which was probably not my best move, but might have to extend those. So I'll just wrap this in tape, and then I can plug all this back in, put the radio back in, put this whole center section back together, and keep running those wires to the passenger side. Alright, so finally onto the passenger side, and the wires stop just there. So I'm going to have to extend those into the door, but I'll get the door card off, mount the actuator, and work out all of that part before I run the wires to it. This one's only 2 wires, so it's heaps easier. Most of the work is in the driver's side, so this should be pretty simple and smooth. So let's get stuck into it. I'll run a time lapse because you see me do it on the other side, and then we'll be all done. Alright, so we got this side wrapped up really quickly. It took probably 15-20 minutes, if that. So just got to test it before we put it all back together. As you saw, I had to extend the wires a little bit, so that's fine. I don't want to put anything back together until I've tested it. So got the controller here, locked, perfect, unlocked. So hit the lock button, hit the unlock button, sweet. So I'll put this back together, and that's it. Central locking on a Hilux, or any car that you wish. Super simple. I did have a bit of a hard time with the wiring trying to find the 12 volt, but other than that, it was pretty cruisy. You do have to get a little bit inventive with these sometimes. Alright, so that's it. Everything's back together. So I haven't put the cluster back together. I'll be doing some stuff with that tomorrow. So the central locking part of everything is done. So just to show you again, if I lock it, you can see this part here change, and the same on the other side. This gimbal is a bit tricky. So there's one there, one on this side, press the lock button, and this side also. So that's it. Central locking, all done. Alright, so that's it for this week's episode of El Jefe's Shop Shop. I hope you enjoyed the central locking tutorial, and I hope you learned something. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.